So welcome everybody to the Video Games Tableau user group. Very excited. This is my very first one that I'm attending. So I have high expectations, Lewis.
Well, now you're giving me pressure on that. Alrighty, let's keep. Okay, so let's do a little bit of intro. So I'm Louis. I am manager at 2K Games, where I'm part of a team that does like a lot of the dashboards. The team itself is called the Visual Analytics team. I'm also a Tableau visionary. So Don and we have just been crowned the 2026 visionaries for this year. So really excited and happy to kind of lead the committee and grow and nurture them. So expect more great stuff from us from now on. I'm also a co-lead for Games Like This community project. So if you are keen on practicing your data viz skills using video games data set, we have a couple of slides at the end of the call, and then I'll walk you through that. Apart from that, I am a Asia mentor for the Tableau Sandbox Buddy program, which is run by Prasan and Torre. And I'm also a podcaster for Secrets of the Viz, where I kind of talk to authors on their viz and kind of get behind their creative processes and how they actually created one of the vizes that you've seen on Tableau Public and other platforms as well. My partner in crime, Maha, who started this whole talk with me, is unable to join the call today, but he is from the parent company, Take-Two. So he's kind of like my counterpart over there. And then we have our latest and freshest co-lead, Dawn, who has joined us this year, but I'll leave her to give her intro by herself.
So yeah, Tech Tips Girl blog is like my main site where I give tips and tricks on Tableau, Alteryx, and some other Microsoft Office stuff. I've been doing this for a long time, so it's older versions of Microsoft Office, I would say. Like tips like, did you know that you can block like Outlook invites so people can't forward them, or they can't reply all to an email? Like that's another quick tip that I think everyone should look up how to do. But that's in my blog site. I've been a presenter at TC24, TC25, and now TC26. Oh my goodness. And now I'm also the Game Nights Viz co-lead. So I've been bugging Lewis for a while, being like, hey, can I be a part of this?
So she's going in with a full package, Games Like Viz and Video Games Time. So there you have it. Alrighty. So who are we? We are a Tableau user group that is focused on the video games industry. So this is actually curated for anyone working in the industry or looking to get into it. So we want to kind of facilitate and nurture a community that can kind of learn from one another. So anything to do with things that are happening in our industry and how people are implementing analytics or AI stuff in our industry. So it will be a virtual first meetup that is going to be bi-monthly. We do have a LinkedIn group, so you can actually go to that link, tiny URL, and it'll point you to the LinkedIn group. And do engage with us over there. We'll love to chat with you on that. In terms of the cadence of the meetups, we are in March. So the next one will be probably in June, followed by September and December. So the June one would be kind of a post Tableau conference coverage, because I know not everyone is going to Tableau conference, but hopefully you're going. We do have some slides at the end to kind of talk about Tableau conference, so do stay to the end and Dawn will take you through that. In terms of our industry cadence, right? We've just passed the GDC, the Games Developer Conference every year. It's kind of one of the biggest one, and this year they actually rebranded quite a bit. Jeff was there last week to give a talk, and he's here today to redo that amazing talk that he had over there. In April, we have the BAFTA Games Award, and then followed by some other really huge e-games events like EVO, Gamescom, and so on and so forth, right? And we'll continue to kind of give coverage on those. So if you have been on at GDC or you haven't been, there was a keynote that kind of talked about how to build a lasting game, which I thought was really interesting. And this was actually done by Rob Parder, the ex-chief creative officer of Blizzard. So he has a lot of experience in building games like World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Hearthstone, and what other games he built? Overwatch as well. And he talked about basically three pillars, right? That a lot of studios are kind of not doing it right, and I think this is a uprising kind of trend in our industry that I think should be considered, right? So he talked about starting with the team itself, right? You build a game that the team loves and not what you think the player wants, and he basically talked about this in the way where the play test has to get your developers and designers and people in your team excited about if they play the game, if they play a half polished game and they are more excited about that than something that's out there in the market, then you have kind of like a winner. The other thing he also talked about is involving the team, because everyone has a lot of different ideas, right? Creativity comes from everywhere. And what he did was that he created this virtuous cycle of ideas and development through what they call by seeding. So everyone comes out with different ideas and they kind of put post-it notes to the different ideas to vote, what should go into the game and stuff like that. And then the third thing is he talked about, tackling the hardest challenge of the game, which is the core gameplay loop, right? So you want to have like a minimum lovable product. I know that in product development they always talk about minimum viable product, which is like the bare minimum that should go to the market. But the minimum viable doesn't mean that it's the optimum one, right? So which is why he talked about minimum lovable product, meaning that if your team loves something that is unpolished and stuff like that, you can continue to iterate it. There's the passion to drive that. And we've seen this happen very recently in a game that some of you might be very familiar with called Clay Obscure. And I managed to find a data set that talks about how many Game of the Year awards that was given to Clay Obscure. And officially, as of March 2026, it has overtaken Elden Ring, which previously held that title. And some of you might feel, or some of us might feel that Game of the Year awards sometimes might be biased and stuff like that. But if we take a look at player choice, they are also at the top, right? So this actually shows us that if the studios and developers actually put passion and love into the game itself, they were building the games that they want to play, not what they feel that the player wants to play. And this has helped them, and this has resonated very well with the community. And for those that have not played Clay Obscure, I strongly encourage you. So Nick, if you are looking to buy a PS5 and you don't know what games to play, Clay Obscure is the number one game that I would recommend. Right. So without further ado, I'll leave it over to Jeff, who's the technical director at Gearbox Software, who is going to talk to us about how the team actually did launch load testing to help optimize networking and matchmaking and stuff like that. So over to you, Jeff.
I also apologize if you hear some chirping in the background. I got some baby chicks on Wednesday, and just like a normal baby, they are very loud.
That is pretty random.
Yeah, sorry. They're hopefully noise canceling captures it. You don't quite see it, but always that risk. All right, perfect. All right, thank you for the introduction. As mentioned before, my name is Jeff, and despite struggling to present this through technology, I am a technical director at Gearbox Software. I'm in charge of engineering on our online platform. I've been at Gearbox 7.5 years. I started on Borderlands 3 and have been working on shipping games on our platform ever since. I'm really excited about what I get to share today, but first and foremost, I want to note I'm not the main character. I get to work with an amazing group of people, and it is their accomplishments that I get to share with you all today. What I'm hoping you'll walk away with is how Gearbox approached load testing. We've had some successes and some stumbles, and overall, what kind of concerns and constraints we had as we went through this process. There is going to be some technical discussion here, but the technical stuff is pretty light. This is mostly a process-related thing to give you an idea on load testing, what it is, why we're doing it, less about the technical issues that we dove into here. So hopefully, if you've never heard of load testing, you'll be able to get an idea what we did, why we did it. Now, GDC asked me to include a note about silencing your cell phones. I left it in here just as another reminder. This is a condensed talk from what I gave at GDC. If you thought this was cool and interesting and you want to see a talk that goes into way more detail, the recording of that talk should be up on GDC Vault. In case you've never heard of an online platform before, I want to talk quickly about what Gearbox's online platform is, which is publicly branded as Shift. So if you've ever seen that logo or branding before, that's what it's talking about. It starts with awesome and amazing Gearbox games like Borderlands 4. And actually, the Shift platform was first introduced in Borderlands 2 and has been in every Gearbox game since. And we have our amazing players that without them, none of this would work. And this online platform is in between as we help to connect players to the game and to each other. We have all sorts of features, whether that's managing accounts and all of the legal requirements and challenges globally, to a cross-platform friends list that players can work on. So what my team does is we focus on integrating these features into our games so that things are smooth, seamless, and work well. And then we help engage with players, make sure they have their friends, matchmaking works well for them. We have cross-play multiplayer, and everything works well. To talk a little bit technically about the platform, we start with our players, and when they play our game, they make HTTP calls to various APIs. We have about 20 publicly facing APIs that our game clients will talk to, but in total we have 56, as there's a lot behind the scenes that goes on. These are running in Docker containers, mostly in Golang. We have a couple of older applications on Ruby on Rails. And we are 100% cloud, 100% AWS, and Fargate is our compute solution that we use. Generally speaking, we have a lot of MySQL databases for our persistent relational data and Redis for our more ephemeral caches. We have a couple of other things floating around, a DynamoDB or two for a non-SQL database, but for the most part, we're MySQL and Redis. I'm going to start by talking about some background information, why we're load testing and the challenges we saw. It's been a while since we've done a large-scale load test. The last one we did was for Borderlands 3, and we've made a lot of improvements on our platform since then, switching to more serverless options and generally just dealing with all the upgrades that Amazon has delivered since then. Borderlands 4 also has a lot more online features than previous titles in the Borderlands franchise before it, meaning that those features have not actually seen launch-level traffic in production before. And we know these games are popular with our players. We'll release a DLC or an update, players will come back, and we wanted to have a platform that could scale up to those players, but also scale back down in between content drops. All of this led us to desiring a more rigorous load testing approach. We wanted to really give this a lot of focus and make sure that it would work well. So we made a plan. And like a lot of good plans, we had some solutions criteria to explore. The first is scaling the load test. This was a pain point for us in Borderlands 3. We spent probably about half of our time investigating issues with the load test itself and not the platform, which means half our time was spent on something that wasn't directly benefiting players. Now, this is never going to be zero, but we wanted to reduce that from 50% quite a bit. We also wanted a load test that was accurate, which feels like a no-brainer. Like, why would you do a load test that's not accurate? But because of some assumptions and mistakes that we have made in the past, we focused too hard on load testing trees, and we missed load testing the forest together. And lastly, proactive observability. It's really great if you have an online platform that can respond to issues, but we wanted to focus on what issues were coming up so we could avoid them happening altogether. And we had some constraints as well to work through. Like pretty much everything, time and money are this forever constraint that we have to work around. But we also decided to do our load test later on in the game's development. We did this so we can have a more accurate load test. But by doing so, it meant we were doing this load test while the game was getting shipped and all of the crazy chaos and challenge that comes with shipping a game. With this plan, we decided to build something new and have a different approach. And that approach has two founding principles that shaped this load testing effort. The first is one load test to rule them all. We wanted a single load test that did everything a Borderlands 4 player does. The idea was to give us the accuracy that we wanted by simulating the players. Next was observability and equal importance to scalability with a 2-minute benchmark to identify issues. I'm going to talk about observability a ton, but first I want to talk about that first pillar, a one load test to rule them all. And I can do that best with a picture. First, I'm going to talk about what we did in Borderlands 3. We used a framework called Locust, and that load testing script would talk to one API, and then that API would talk to a MySQL or Redis, it would talk to other APIs, whatever it needed to in order to perform its functions. And we recreated this over and over and over until all of our APIs were represented and load tested. For Borderlands 4, we had a single K6 script, and I'll talk about K6 a little bit on the next slide. And this one script talked to absolutely everything a player talks to, all the different APIs, all the different workflows, and then those talk to all of the other APIs and MySQLs all behind the scene, representing one test to rule them all. Fundamentally, we wanted to simulate we didn't want to simulate load. We wanted to simulate players, think about players, how they work, how they interact with things. And this represented how we framed this load test by thinking about player actions. And that's actually how we represented this in Jira. We had a matchmaking epic and a boot up the game epic to represent these player actions as opposed to an accounts API or a matchmaking API. We found 24 different unique player actions that we represented in this script. To give you an idea on the scope of one of those actions, I'll talk about adding a friend. That starts with making a search for a friend. So you type in a display name, you get some results back. You grab one of those results, you send them a friend request, and then that person either accepts, declines, or ghosts that friend request. That whole workflow encompasses one of these 24 actions, and that's one of the simpler workflows. You can think you know what your game is doing, or you can know what it's doing. And we use packet captors via Wireshark to make sure that our load tests were accurately capturing what the game client did. K6 was the framework we used. It's written in JavaScript, and it's very common. There are a lot of big customers that use K6, and we wanted something that was tried and true and battle tested. To give you an idea, when we created one load test to rule them all, we were able to simulate 12,500 users on a single container. If you're not sure what 16 CPU means in this context, that's because we use AWS Fargate, and that's the metrics that it used as well. So if you use Amazon, that'll give you an idea on how many users we were able to simulate. I'm going to talk about observability quite a bit. In case you've never heard about observability, it's sometimes written as O11Y, which is because observability, the word starts with the letter O, has 11 characters, and then ends with a Y. It's also sometimes called Ollie, if you've heard that phrase. And there's a lot of examples of observability here. I won't dive into them really in too much detail, but generally, if you have something that gives you insight onto how your platform is running and operating, it's considered observability. And we wanted to do better here. We wanted to level up and make sure that we could have clear insight into how the platform was working. But some of that is with tools. And if you have this awesome, great tool, but nobody is using it, it's not really providing value. So we wanted the team to be leveled up using these tools, which led us to a focus on observability of equal importance to scalability. We came up with a 2-minute benchmark on how long it would take to identify an issue, with the idea that you would have 2 different 1-minute tools, or 1-minute screens, as these are often tools that are digitally presented. If you have an alert that is fired, someone has reported an issue, the idea is any engineer could hear that information, go to a specific tool, spend 1 minute on that tool, figure out the info needed, and then jump to a second tool to actually find the issue, also within a minute, leading to 2 minutes to identify an issue. It's worth noting, though, we really wanted to focus on proactive observability, find the issues before they showed up. It's just a little harder to create a benchmark for something like that without saying absolutely nothing breaks. And saying absolutely nothing breaks is a pretty tough metric to work and test around. So I'm going to talk about this load test in 5 different chapters based off of elements of load test. The first was our vertical slice that we performed. We were doing something new and different, and we wanted to make sure that this different approach was still valid, and we wanted to not throw a bunch of eggs in one basket here. So we borrowed from game development. We created a vertical slice for load tests. If you're not familiar, a vertical slice is generally where you represent a part of the game completely and fully. So we wanted to do that with our load test. We grabbed boot and sit, the first thing players did, and we wanted to fully represent that feature, scale it to a very high CCU, which for us was 3 million CCU with a 15-minute ramp-up rate. And we wanted to see, is this going to work? Our one load test to rule them all, our big observability focus, everything we were trying to do, we wanted to see, how does it work? And this is how it works. Now, I know this graph doesn't mean too much, but I'm going to walk you through what these different sections mean. Firstly, the different colors each represent a unique HTTP call. Our 15-minute ramp-up time is represented here, and there's a lot that happens when a player starts up the game. They authenticate, they get their news, they get their playlist, they get their entitlements, they get their information, their friends, all of that. There is a ton going on when a player starts up the game. And when a player sits at the main menu, there's pretty much nothing going on, except for these two. We have telemetry that we collect on our players and what they're doing in our game. Now for this load test, we're collecting telemetry that says they sat at the main menu and did nothing. Not very exciting, but it's still data that we would submit to our data pipeline. Next, we have an API that is an HTTP long pole that is gathering messages for the player, matchmaking information and things like that. Well, at this point, there is no messages or no information being given. The client wouldn't know that, and it would still make this request for that info. And we wanted to simulate that. And we ran this for an hour after we had the ramp up time, and then finally ending with a 15-minute ramp down. So as we came out of this vertical slice, we wanted to see how are things going. And we were pretty happy here. The strategy was working. We were able to hit a pretty high CCU in a pretty short amount of time. And we represented a ton of calls. If you recall from that previous graph, there's a lot of different colors, and we had represented so much here. So we said, yeah, this is great. This is working. Moving forward, we wanted to continue doing this. We were onto something. This was the right path, and we were wrong. We had some incorrect assumptions that we made early on that hurt us later on. At this scope and scale, we were comfortable with K6. Even though we represented a ton of information, we were pretty happy. But the challenge came with the call count complexity versus the workflow complexity. Now, we know call count and complexity weren't going to match exactly, but we assumed if most of the HTTP calls are represented, perhaps most of the complexity was represented as well, which was absolutely incorrect. And it really hurt us when we were scaling the load test client. So we started with one action, and we wanted to add the remaining 23 actions in case 6, representing everything there. Some of these were simple, like adding a friend, but matchmaking and all the different things that could happen, a player dropping out, somebody disconnecting, and all of those workflows being handled was very tricky. That and working with K6 provided challenges we didn't anticipate. So I asked the team, what were some of the challenges they had working with K6? And I got a long list of issues. I won't dive into them all in particular, but the big takeaway is this was a death by 1,000 cuts for us. We were making incorrect assumptions. We thought things would be easier than they actually were. And this ate up a lot of valuable time. Now, it's one thing to eat up time because of an incorrect assumption, but we're doing this getting close to shipping a game, and that time is way more precious. That being said, we did get this to work, and here's an example of one of the final load test runs. In the middle here, you see there's a lot of players doing more things. Now they're matchmaking, they're adding their friends, they're communicating with other players, and that's what happened for the bulk of the load test. We also, towards the end of the load test, changed it so users would ramp down, restart the test instead of ramp down. We did this so we could run a soak test over a longer period of time to catch more issues. Now in this screenshot, this is actually not from one of the soak tests, but in theory, this is what players would be doing. So as we worked on scaling the client, our vertical slice messed up here. It didn't capture the full load test complexity. And because it didn't do that, we invested a lot of energy into a tool that wasn't right for the job. Trying to get the dynamic events is really what took us a lot of time. Because we had to have a Redis that had all the load test clients talk to each other, and that was tricky to implement and get right. And trying to diagnose that during the load test was also very challenging. There was a lot of trial and error, and our estimates were often wrong, making it very difficult to plan around. overall, thinking about K6, it all founds on that one principle that we had for one load test to rule them all. User simulation versus load generation. And remember, we wanted user simulation here. That was our goal with the load test. But K6 is actually not good at that. It's very good at load generation, and that's how it's been used in the past. And if you think about what happened with boot and sit, where players are just starting their game client, really load generation and user simulation are more or less the same thing. But as we added dynamic events, that's where it started to drift, and that drift added a lot of challenges. I also have called this a load testing script, but it's doing everything a game client does. That's not a script, that's an application. We should have thought of this like an application, using framework and tools that are just like the applications we develop. But at the end of the day, it worked. We did have one load test to rule them all. It did accurately represent player traffic. It was just brittle. Engineers are no stranger to taking a square peg and getting it through a round hole. That's what we did here. Not ideal, but it can function. So we took that test and we were using it to help scale the platform. Now, before I talk about some CCU numbers, I do want to talk a little bit about being over-prepared. And CCU, if you haven't heard the term before, means concurrent users. And that is what we were targeting. We started with 3 million concurrent users for our load test, and then we dropped that down to 2 million, but we kept the 15-minute ramp up. At this point in our load test, we were closer to release. We could have a better idea how many users we would have, but we also wanted to be overly aggressive here. You don't want to be underprepared and have a bad launch for players. But if you're overprepared, you're just spending way more resources and energy fixing problems that will never show up. So you want to be just a little bit overprepared here. And as we started scaling, easily the biggest challenge for us was Redis. Hands down, we spent more time on Redis scaling. And that's because a horizontal or a vertical scale would take 30 to 45 minutes. So if you needed to do both of them, that's an hour to an hour and a half for scaling. And there's compute optimized Redis, memory optimized, network optimized, all sorts of things that maybe don't matter at a small scale, but when you have millions of users you're simulating, those optimizations really add up. And some of these Redises didn't have percentile-based usage. So like memory, we could see, okay, you're using 70% memory. We can kind of figure out if we add more nodes or add more users, what that looked like. Network bandwidth was not the case. It just said throttled, not throttled, making it really difficult to try and guess and predict. All of this led us to switching to serverless Redis. And this is the eCPU from one of our serverless Redises during our launch of Borderlands 4. In the beginning, there's not a lot happening as there's users that are still there playing Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands and Homeworld 3. And then boom, we launched the game. And this automatically scales and handles our traffic perfectly well over the launch weekend and into the weekday when people don't play as much. We're no strangers to serverless. Actually, our MySQL offering that I mentioned before, we've been using serverless MySQL for quite a while. But it's worth noting that that is a more mature product from Amazon. Serverless has always been a good case for us. Actually, Fargate is serverless as well. We've been saving money with serverless. It has scaled easier. For our workflows, everything has been simpler and faster and great. And after we switched to Redis, it was a night and day difference. It solved our scaling challenges practically overnight. We ran into a couple of little issues though. The graph I'm showing is actually a combination of two different things, your read eCPU and your write eCPU. And there are different throttling restrictions on both of those. And we've accidentally ran into caps on one, but not the other. So little things like that. But there was a pretty big issue that impacted us. And that is with the connections that I also will show with the diagram here. So imagine you have a Redis and it's talking to a couple of different Docker containers. Serverless Redis was missing a setting called TCP keep alive. And really what that is just a heartbeat service between the Redis and the Docker container. So if a Docker container disappears after that keep alive setting, it will drop that connection because it's not talking to the container anymore. And when you don't have that setting, it means these open connections persist forever, like this, where you have all these connections that are just open, but nothing's talking to them until you eventually run out. Now, this wasn't a problem before because on-demand Redis had the setting, and this was a solved problem we didn't have to think about until we made the switch. We also didn't catch this until pretty late in development because we have a script that would nuke our load test environment every night and then resurrect it in the morning. Because of that, all of these connections got cleaned up every day. When we ran longer soak tests, that's when we started to run into this issue and noticed it. I wish we'd been more careful here. We could have looked at this technology, understand the differences that we had lost a little better, and gone in with more knowledge and better prepared. All right, cost. Load testing is tricky, particularly when it comes to cost. You not only have to pay to scale your platform, you have to pay to scale the load test itself, which means per minute you're spending more money on the load test. And we have to be careful here. Sure, we could just keep throwing money at Amazon and they would have loved that, I bet. But it doesn't mean that we're focusing our resources on the right things here. And we wanted to be smart. So that 2 million tests that I mentioned, we actually only ran that every 2 weeks. We were running 2-week sprints at the time, and our sprint demo was just a 2 million load test to make sure it worked. When we weren't doing the 2 million demo, we did 100K CCU tests. Makes it easy. It's 1/20th of 2 million. So if you had something that was over 5% usage, you knew that it wouldn't scale all the way up. And that was a nice way to help test our logic, test our observability, make sure that we were doing something that would work well for us. And when we did that 2 mil demo, sometimes it would fail. And if it failed, we said, okay, cool. Wait 2 months, do it again. Sorry, wait 2 weeks and do it again. But then we got closer to launch and wait 2 weeks was not an acceptable answer. So we ran these 2 mil tests more frequently. I want to share some cost numbers and data. I can't share exact dollar values, but I can share relative amounts. So this load testing campaign was over 15 months, but I'll note we didn't load test every week or every month in that time frame. But if you did take all 15 months, combine them together, it equaled about 2.5 times the money we spent when we launched in September 2025. But August of 2025 had over a quarter of our costs in there. When we ran into an issue, we ran that 2 mil test more frequently, and we were running into a lot of issues in August that we had to fix pretty quickly. Top 3 applications by spend. Redis is number 1, not a big surprise. It was on demand for most of this load test. That percentage would be smaller if we only had serverless Redis represented here. Our top 3 application spends, our account service, which is a big monolith, was a quarter of our costs. The other 2 services were what had the most HTTP calls in the graphs that I represented. So it makes sense that those would also be pretty high. All of this led to the moment of truth where we launched. Now, we did all this load testing to launch well, and I'm very proud to say this was our smoothest launch yet. We had no scaling issues. Everything went well across all regions, all launch ways, Steam Tuesday, perfectly. We had observability that gave us incredibly high confidence that if an issue would pop up, we would be alerted of it. I also can't share exact CCU, but we were adequately prepared. And the thing that I am most proud of is we had no launch overtime. To me, that is the metric of success that I care about the most, is that everybody on the team felt great and we didn't have issues that cause us distress. Observability we wanted of equal importance to the scalability though. And I'm happy to say we had no technical blind spots during launch, but we also didn't have an issue to really look into. So it's hard for me to say our observability helped us catch these problems and fix things for users because they just didn't exist. That being said, we did look into some non-player impacting issues, stuff that was very minor, millisecond increases in response time for a couple of minutes, largely because we didn't have anything else to dive into. We did have a couple of issues where we assumed serverless was the issue, and that was never the case. We've always ended up proving what was the real issue, never serverless. But because of that, we could have been more evidence-based investigation. We had something that we couldn't see, and we just went to instantly blame that was the issue. All right, wrapping all of this up here, I had a hard time finding where to put this observability in practice, as it covered a lot of different areas. But one of the challenges that I gave the team was that we launch in one environment, so we should be load testing in one environment. Now that might sound, oh yeah, it makes sense at first, but the way we've traditionally done load tests is we would run a load test, then make one change, then rerun the load test and see exactly what happened in that change. It's a very scientific approach. And because it took so long, we had multiple load testing environments so everyone could be working in parallel. The problem is that scientific approach works when you have a controlled environment. And when you ship a game in production and have people playing that game, that is anything but a controlled environment. So by saying you have to use one environment, you had to make sure that excellent observability was in place. When you made a change, you had to have the observability on that change to make sure it's working excellently. But we didn't always have excellent observability, particularly in the beginning. So this ate up time. We had to try to debug issues and didn't have the observability. People didn't know which of the half dozen changes that were rolled out broke that 2 mil load test demo. While it did highlight a weakness and it resulted in us having a great end product, this took more time, and time was a pretty precious commodity during this. So I'm not entirely sure if this was the right call or I would suggest it. But I will say load testing is amazing training. I was so happy with how much the team's knowledge and troubleshooting skill scaled as with the platform. And that included using observability tools. By making sure that the team was using these tools during our load test, it helped give us confidence to use them during launch. And when those tools were not sufficient, it would highlight them. Whenever we did a load test and then we had a problem, and if it took us more than 2 minutes to diagnose that, now we have 2 problems. And during our demos, we'd run into an issue, we would write 2 JIRAs to fix the next time, fix the underlying cause and improve the observability so we can find this problem easier in the future. Some final reflections connecting all of the different chapters here. Beware of some missing challenges or complexities when you are evaluating a new approach. We stuck with what players did first, and what we should have done is stick with what was the most complicated thing to implement. Scaling a load test client, really think about your decision here. Do you want to have load generation or user replication? And then build something around that. But also don't stress it if you're wrong here. What we did was brittle, but it did technically work. I'm very happy with a lot of the bleeding edge technology we use to scale the platform using newer serverless Redis, but be prepared to be cut a little bit on sharp edges when you're using something more bleeding edge. This one really stands out as an obvious thing to me, and I feel bad we missed it. Cost observability should have been first and foremost. We should have had cost observability before we ran a single load test in our load test environment, having an alert on daily issues, a post to Slack or to Teams or an email saying how much you spent and in what different areas. That would have helped us every day understand where we could be optimizing things. Also, this was a successful launch for us, the most successful one that we've ever had. I give load testing and our approach here a lot of reason for that. I shouldn't be too critical on all the things that we could do better. But also, I wish we had been better on using our observability tools because it's some science and evidence-based investigation that we missed just because we blamed the thing we couldn't see. I want to wrap this up with what I have as the 3 most important messages and takeaways to me. This is what I would tell the past version of myself if I knew how to time travel, and these are the things that I'm carrying with me to the future to make sure that the next load testing effort at Gearbox is even better. One load test to rule them all was awesome. It worked well for us. It was valuable. We used that load test to use practice launches, to test our alerts. It was just an incredibly valuable tool that had wide-ranging use. But it's an application, not a script. Should treat it like an application and use the application languages that we use. Next, that observability training is so key and vital. If you have the most amazing observability tool that tells you everything you need to know and nobody uses it in a high-pressure situation like a launch, it's providing 0 value. Really make sure that the team is ownership of these tools and is excited about them. And last is cost observability. It would have been so easy to just have a post or a message saying, here's how much we spent. And that would have helped us out, save so much money and optimize things for load test. All right, that's it. That's my presentation. If anyone is interested on connecting to me on LinkedIn, I've got a QR code, or you can just search my name and it should work.
Thanks, Jeff. That was really, really insightful. I mean, for those that are in the video games industry, we know that, months leading up to a launch is very, very chaotic. And I'm happy to see the behind the scenes. I never knew that, load testing has so many steps to it, and the way they use observability and, the tools that help you to analyze and, simulate load and user replication. It's really, really, really interesting. And I think some of the messages that some of the points that you pointed out at the end leads back to the keynote that GDC has that Rob Pardon say, lean into what your team does the best, and kind of leverage those skills that you had, and have everyone be on board with what you're trying to do, and that kind of builds a better product. In your case, builds a better process in making sure that our game doesn't crash on launch. And for those that haven't played Borderlands 4, go and play it. I've played Borderlands 3, but I've not played 2. But I've heard that 2 is kind of the GOAT of the franchise, and 4 is going back to the GOAT. So I've heard a lot of good things about it. I've played through a couple of chapters. I need to finish up the game. Hopefully in the next couple of months. There are a couple of DLCs that came out, which is really, really interesting. So hopefully everyone has time to go and try that out as well. Oh yeah, there was a question. You're fast. There we go. Is there any other questions from the folks before we pass it over to Sahana? Sounds good. All right, cool. Thank you again, Jeff, for sharing your immense knowledge. I'll catch up with you next week in Austin. All right, Sahana, take it away.
Thank you for having me here. I will try to be as quick as possible, but you can reach out to me later if you have more questions, okay? Hi, I'm Sahana. I'm working as a director of product at Dragon City, a mobile game in Social Point. I'm building the roadmap and strategy, doing the forecasting, managing P&L, etc., based on this roadmap. And I'm also leading a team of product managers here and the designers to execute on this. I have been in this role for the past 1 year, but prior to this, I have worked as product manager in multiple mobile games for almost 8 years now. Okay. Today's session, so I'm going to talk about how data talks to you, and mainly if you're willing to listen. So this is more like a guide to the PMs on using data to make better decisions on their day-to-day. I have been in situations in the past where like head of product or like the company owner who would come to us and say, hey, I think we should build this. And the whole room would ideally just nod. It's not because, I'm not saying that it's happening everywhere, but it's not because people are lazy or people don't want to look at data, but they rely on gut versus data sometimes because they feel that data is slower in general. But today I want to change that. And I think that data isn't slower than intuition. It's just a skill that we need to use properly in general. Okay. Cool. So why does data matter for PMs? Basically, I think it's mainly for 4 different things. First one is mainly to make decisions. So when you are data-driven, you start having evidence and stop having opinions in general. And the second thing is for understanding the users. Surveys generally tell you what people say, but data tells you what they actually do. And these two are different things and have different impact altogether. And the third thing is for prioritization, because every PM has more ideas than the time that they have. So data is how you stop arguing about what to build next and then start deciding. And the fourth one mainly is finding problems. A best PM finds the problem before user complains about it, and data is your early warning system for it. So you don't have to be a data scientist. You just need to have fluency enough to ask the right questions and read through the answers. I've organized today's talk around phases that mirrors how a PM actually works. Basically, the pre-analysis, where the data work that you do before building anything. Then you take it live, which is basically you design and run experiments, or you launch the feature where you have real-time monitoring, etc. And then post-analysis, where you're measuring what you have shipped actually worked or not. I'll try to give some examples or case study to help you understand better. But yeah, I will be covering these topics. So moving on. So basically imagine you join a new team and you inherit a product. One of the hardest questions is, where do I focus? nobody has an answer to it. And if somebody tells they do, then they're ideally guessing. So data gives you a structured way to find out. And two main tools do the most of the work for it. One is funnel, which kind of jots down the step user takes to achieve the goal. And then you look at where they fall off, and the biggest drop is generally telling you where the biggest problem is. And the second one is mainly defining the metrics in general, the key metrics that you want to track. It could be like usage rate, open rate, session, etc. And if the metric is declining, then it generally shows something is wrong. So data shows to you where the problem is before users start complaining about it, or before you get to know it from other form. The principle here is simple. You should let the data point tell you to focus on the right place. No, like where do you need to prioritize and focus, and make sure that okay, this is where you put your energy in the first place. Cool. So let me make it concrete with the case here. Like, so for example, if you're talking about online flight booking platform, you don't know where to focus, and I mean, how do you arrive at the area where you want to focus on? So for example, here we have 4 key, I would say, steps for a user when they come to the platform. First is they come and search for the flight, they get the result page, then they add their passenger details, and then they have a payment. No, so the question now is, okay, where does the problem lie? Or like basically you don't know where the issue is occurring, or on which device, or which device type, or what is the main problem that you need to focus on. So for example, imagine that you have this kind of a data. The first thing that jumps off here is that, okay, you see that mobile generates almost like 70% of the traffic. So whatever problem you find, it matters most on mobile, no? So now looking at the results, there is a drop that you can see which happens between results and passenger details, especially on mobile users. But you need to also see, okay, whether this drop is also happening on desktop. Is it similar, or is it something that is only particular to mobile or not? So I'm just gonna show you the comparison here, and you can see that there is a drop between passenger details to the payment page, and the gap is so high between mobile and desktop. No, so you can see that there is clearly a problem here. Mobile users are getting to the passenger details page, but they are dropping off after that. And now you know that okay, there is a problem here. And you can go ahead and figure out what is that problem. No, why is this happening? It could be multiple reasons. You could then do test. You can do a QA, or you can go and ask users what has happened. It could be that okay, in mobile something is not showing up, or some kind of a issue is happening only on mobile, which is kind of leading to this. But the data has pointed to you that okay, this is where you need to focus on, and this is where there is a problem. And why you need to fix this is also very clear, because you see that there is 3 times more traffic on mobile versus desktop. So if you fix this issue, ideally you're going to see an enormous revenue impact, and that is where you should be focusing on it. No. So yeah, I mean, just to give you an example on how we could use data to identify problem, I think this is one of the ways to look at it. The key message here is that you should always try to break it down between different kinds of I would say user base, regions, and things like this, so that sometimes you will miss out on something if you look at an overall level and don't deep dive enough on each of these stages in the funnel itself. Okay. Then moving on, the second thing which we talked about was also in terms of potential impact analysis. You know, this is one of the scenarios which PMs face constantly. Basically, you will always have to make a decision on which feature to build first. Basically, you always have limited resources, but you will have many things to build. So the main criteria is that okay, you need to understand the potential impact of what you are building. So there are generally 4 steps that you will have to follow. One is, first is you define what are the options that you want to choose. or build, then you try to get data that will tell you relevancy of each of these options, tells you how many users are impacted, or how, how does it make a difference for this kind of users? What is the volume of it? What is the what kind of a metric it is going to move, etc. And then you need to estimate those impact as well. So if you are going to say that, okay, I'm going to build option A, and this is going to move my metric by X percentage. But if I go ahead and build option B, then it is going to increment by Y%. Then you are having key ways to compare between the impact, and then you'll be able to make a decision, which is ultimately making a go or a no-go option. No, like, whether you go with option A or option B based on the projection in itself. So in this case, what you can avoid is that you can make decisions which is a lot more where you're a lot more confident about it, and generally it is not like, okay, you're doing it based on opinion in general. Okay. This might not work everywhere, but yeah, in most of the cases, yes, it does. So I would say use it when you find it useful for you. No. For example, I'm just going to give one case study here. Imagine that there is a cab aggregator which has a driver app, and driver needs to log in using either phone number or email. And to make changes to that, the driver has to call the call center to make these changes. Now, if a PM wants to build a self-service update as a feature, but has bandwidth to build only one, now you have to make a decision on which one do I build first, no? So if you look at the data here, first instinct would be that, hey, a lot of people are doing on email, so the volume of email is higher, so let me go and build for email, no? But if you look at the login usage, you can see that 70% of the drivers use phone instead of email, no? Only 25% use email. And number of unique drivers who are calling is almost identical, 48,000 and 47,000. So the call volumes are similar, but phone number affects nearly 3 times as many drivers in their daily usage. So you will build the phone number first and email later, no? So here the potential impact is higher, even though the raw call count is slightly lower. But with the detail on all these metric, you're able to make the right decision, and you get the right kind of insights, no? If you just look at one metric saying that, hey, I will just look at the calls made and then I will make a decision, I think you might make a wrong decision in that cases. So yeah, I think this is one of the things that helps the PMs to make decisions in a much, I would say, confident way, rather than just based on gut feeling, you know. Cool. And the last one, which is mainly for the pre-analysis part, where it's about market sizing, you know, trying to understand which of the, I would say, market do I feature or something, or even product that do I fast follow, no? Which one do I think is something that I need to build in general, or you want to pitch to your leadership about a new product or a new thing that competitor has launched, etc. I think this will help you make that pitch in general. How do you do it? Basically, you need to try and answer these questions. What is the absolute market like? It could be in terms of downloads, active users, etc. And then you should try to look at 3 key potential metrics there. One is basically retention, basically to understand whether users stick around. Revenue potential, trying to see, okay, do you make money out of it? And the last one is how sticky is the product? Basically, where are players or are users coming more often to the product? No, so these are the things that you will have to evaluate if you want to get a picture of whether this product or this whatever feature or this kind of a this is something that whether this market is worth the investment or not. So I think mostly, I find this happening mostly in scenarios where you have to make these kind of, when you become the person who's making the decisions on this. But I'm just going to give you some example here. For example, if you are building a studio and you want to fast follow one of the games, no, I think which a lot of the people in the industry are doing it. Okay, you see something successful, you would want to fast follow it. So imagine if you're looking at these 2 games, I mean, if you look at it, you can see that the retention numbers for game A looks very impressive, no? Like these are very, very strong numbers. But if you look at everything else, game B has a higher number. Like, so for game B, it is 9 times higher download, 12 times higher daily active user, 33 times more monthly revenue. And also you can see that the stickiness in itself is also much higher than game A. So more engaged daily despite having lower retention. Basically, they might be coming much more often, but maybe they're not retaining long term. But the main lesson here is that relative metrics are only meaningful in context of absolute scale also. So for example, even if the retention numbers are really good on game A, but the absolute scale of game B is much, much higher, no? Like it is at a factor of 5. So even though D30 retention might be lower, still they have a much, much higher engagement, much, much higher monetization, and simply larger user base in itself. So ideally, I mean, as a decision, you should be following game B itself. I have just used an example of, okay, how you can try and do comparison of different kind of metrics and try to understand what do you need to take a look at when you're trying to do assessing of the market in itself. Okay, cool. So I think that was mainly on the pre-analysis part of it, like generally what you do before you are actually investing either resources from tech or you're in building a team or anything, which is you do as a pre-analysis before you get into action, no? The other part of it, which is the post-analysis. The post-analysis is when you are actually have done everything, but now you need to know whether you did something successful or not. So how do you do it? Basically, you try to measure the impact properly, no? So for this to be done in a really good way, one thing you have to take into consideration is you should always try to define your success metric before the launch. I know that I'm mentioning it now, but ideally when you're doing a product launch or a feature launch, what you need to do is that you need to define the success metrics before and not after. Because if you decide what success looks like after you see the results, you are actually not measuring. You are actually telling a story that fits the outcome, no? So ideally, you should try and define the success metrics earlier. The second one would be either doing a comparison of a pre-post analysis. I mean, in most of the cases, we do A/B test. I mean, I will talk about A/B test next. But in some cases, when there is no possibility of doing it, you also do a pre-post analysis. But you should be careful about seasonality and careful about what period you're comparing, etc. But I think this is also one way where you could try and measure between two different periods to measure the success of the product. And the step 3 is basically you should also check for side effects. No, like basically you define a key metric that you are defining as a success metric. But you should also look at other metrics, whether a feature or a product is actually hurting this other metric, no? So you should always have guardrail metrics you're watching along with your primary success metric. So it doesn't mean that, okay, you are improving the revenue, but you are killing fully the retention, no? So this shouldn't be the case, and you should always keep this side effects into consideration when you are launching something. And the last one is basically making a decision. So based on these metrics, you either iterate on the product, or you kill the product. No, you will have to make a decision once you have outcome of the feature that you have launched. So the worst outcome of an impact analysis is that it's not a negative result, it is no decision. So basically, if you are doing something and not taking a decision, that means that that's the worst thing that you can do as a PM. So it's always important for you to define the metrics, measure the impact, and then take a decision based on it. Okay. Then now I was talking about A/B testing. So this was basically a way, one main key tool for a PM. Where they need to make sure that, okay, if you are having two different options, you need to try and see, okay, which is the better option, or how do I validate, okay, which option is better? You kind of run a A/B test, So A/B test removes this aspect of, okay, I mean, your opinion on, okay, I think this would work better than the other one, no? So this kind of thing gets removed when you do an A/B test. So when you're doing the A/B test also, you need to follow the same kind of a rigor, which is you have to pick your metric first. You need to make sure what you're going to improve with this change. You need to make sure that, okay, you're dividing the group randomly, ensuring that, okay, you run the experiment long enough to actually get statistically significant results. You also need to make sure that you have guardrail metrics also tracked for both these groups, and ultimately then make a decision based on that. So I think the methodology doesn't change much with the A/B test, but it is just important that you kind of make sure that you are not running the test too short of a time, not keeping too small of a audience, etc., to avoid making wrong decisions based on the data. So yeah, I think this is one of the key things which PMs try to do throughout their career, trying to prove that, okay, this solution is better than that solution, and this is one of the way that they succeed to do it. I can talk about it in with one of this example. So for example, right now, imagine that you are selling some hard currency like gems for $1, but you want to know what is the right price point, no? So imagine that you want to test it for $2, $3, or whatever. Then what you can do is that you run it as a test with multiple groups, which has different values. And then you try to look at each of these metrics to be able to make a decision. Sometimes when you look at only one of the metric, you can make a wrong decision. As I said earlier as well, it's always important to know what do you have to ultimately choose based on what kind of metric. So if you look at this example, you can see revenue per user. Hey, it's very amazing when you do a $3 test. But you can look at the pair conversion. New pair conversion has dropped to half, no? It has become 6%. So if you make a decision that, okay, $3 is the right purchase price point, so let me go ahead with it, you will lose the long-term impact, because over the period of time, you are going to lose the people who are converting. So ultimately, you're not going to make revenue. So that's the key thing that you will have to identify when you are running the test. You always look at metrics not just for short term, across time horizons, and also try and look at balancing both short term impact and long term impact, and then make a decision ultimately. So yeah, this is one of the examples that I could share where, you can see that there are key metrics that you might see doing really well, but there are other metrics that you will have to take a look at if you have to make the right decisions. Okay, so that's mainly about the two sides of a life of a PM, where you do analysis on both the sides when you're doing something before you do something and after you do something. Why I have put SQL here is basically, I think some of you might be thinking, if I'm a PM, why do I need to write code? No, but here's my answer, because SQL is a language for asking questions, every time you write an SQL query yourself, you are actually getting that answers much faster than waiting for an analyst or waiting for somebody to give you those answers. So I personally consider PMs who are the ones who are able to write queries and get these answers, pull their own numbers, are the ones who are really, really dangerous, they are the ones who can make a really big difference in making decisions. So you don't need to be expert, but you just need to know the basics. So I think this is pretty simple kind of logic that you need to apply. So you just need to know what you need to what simple queries that you can write to get this information. And especially, I think one of the most used thing that I see that I am using or my PMs are using are basically joins of tables, because you have mostly all the information available, but you need to know a way to try and join these tables to get the information that you want. No, so I think for a PM, if they have to focus on something in SQL, they need to make sure that, okay, they know the basics and they know how to like make these small, simple joins to be able to get the information that they need. And I think that would be skill set which will be valued a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think that this was just a brief of what data means to the PM. So I would want you to take out these 4 things from this discussion. One is first thing that I mentioned, which is you need to define your metric before the experiment and not after. This sounds very obvious, but it's like violated constantly, like sometimes I have seen a lot of examples where people don't do it. So you have to decide what success looks like before you see the results. And I think this is a must. And then I also think you should segment everything and try to see the data by like segmenting in different kind of through different kind of metrics. You cannot just look at an aggregate and decide, okay, I'm going to make this decision. So sometimes aggregate numbers hides the truth. So it is very important for you to segment it, have deep dive on different metrics to be able to make decisions. Then the third important thing that I want you to take away is that pre-analysis is a must. This saves a lot of engineering time. Mainly, I have seen that engineering is one of the costs that you wouldn't want to utilize it without having a good conviction that, okay, this is going to work. No, so it is one of the costliest resource that you can utilize. No, so you build something and then you see that it's not working. I think it's a stupid decision to make ultimately. So pre-analysis is really important for a PM, and then post-analysis ideally earns trust. Like, so if you do a post-analysis and say that, hey, this was the results, I saw that these things worked and these things didn't work, I think you're building credibility. So you are building credibility that, okay, you are making decisions based on this information that you are getting. So I think this is the third thing that I would want to say. And the last one is SQL is your direct line to data. So I would say own it. You don't need to be an expert in it. You don't need to be a data scientist for it. You just need to be competent enough to pull your own numbers, maybe on a Sunday when no one else is around, but make sure that, okay, you are able to do it, and you get your own data, because data doesn't replace good judgment. It just makes it sharper. Like I don't think data will tell you everything, but the best PMs are the ones who use data to ask better questions, not to avoid making decisions, but to make them make their decisions more confident. No, so yeah, I think these are the 4 key takeaways I would want to put forward for you guys, and I hope that you enjoyed the talk. If you have more questions, you can reach out to me, or you can type in if you have other questions. But yeah, thank you. I think I went really fast, but yeah, hopefully it covered everything.
Thanks, Sahana. I think there's a question from Nick on recommendation for folks who need to compare metrics against 2 different types of game. Like it could be a sequel to a popular game 5 years ago versus a DLC. Like how would you compare the success criteria for the 2 different types of games?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about 2 different types of games, you for sure cannot compare I would say hyper casual game with probably RPG strategy game. No, so the metrics will look very, very different. So but the point is that you will try to make sure that you do this comparison to understand where the difference comes from. No, so for example, in some of the games, maybe if there are shorter session lengths, still they would have higher stickiness. Imagine they come lot more frequently. Like basically they come every day, but they have shorter session lengths. Whereas in an RPG game, they might have longer session lengths, but still come every day, on a everyday basis. So you need to define what is the thing that you want to chase after, what is the key for you to make this game a success. So it's not like you look at an RPG game say that, hey, they have much higher session length, so I also need to make my hyper casual game have a lot longer session length. That's not how it would work. So you would need to use your understanding of what needs to be compared and then make decisions based on it. And it's good to know what are those things where it should be different, but at the same time, you should know where you need to, do a comparison and see, oh, okay, this is where it should be similar. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but this is what I think.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this is really interesting because data is very important for us to understand what happened, how to measure it, and how to improve. So I think like you've touched on all of the key aspects of being, having that analytical mind. The one thing I will add is if people aren't aware, Tableau Desktop is now free. So you can connect, like the best SQL statement you can write is select star from table. And you can put that into Tableau Desktop and you can explore to your heart's desire. Drag and drop different columns into the rows and measures and dimensions, and just having that curiosity mind to kind of explore your data to find something that would tell you a story about what's performing and what's not. So if you have yes, Nick, in order not to burst your Snowflake credits or Databricks credits, you'll need a date filter as well. But so for those who don't know, go download Tableau Desktop today. The only restrictions is you do have the full authoring experience of a creator license. It's just you can't actually publish to a server or cloud. But once you kind of upgrade it to a license, you can actually do that. So, but other than that, you can local save, you can export the image as a you can export the chart as an image and embed it anywhere you want. So try it out. Awesome. Thank you both our speakers, Sahana and Jeff, for this amazing talk. I think it is a lot of value that is within what you guys have shared. I'll just add a little bit before we wrap it up. So for those who are not already in the community, you can actually join the DataFam on Slack. So you can go search for Tableau community on Slack. It'll get you the link to it. And you can ask questions there. So it's basically a community platform where everyone gathers to share knowledge and all. The other thing is we are not the only Tableau user group out there. There are some that are location based. So if you're based in US, there are a few different state level Tableau user group, as well as industry. So ours is considered industry Tableau user group. But if you're interested in like healthcare, finance, and whatnot, there are other user groups as well. Now there are, if you haven't started a Tableau public profile, I would strongly recommend that. There are a couple of different community projects that have existing data sets that you can practice and all. Tableau Desktop is free now, so you can actually do that. Now, I have a few kind of video games focused visualization that I want to kind of do a spotlight on. So last week for Makeover Monday, which is one of the community projects, they had a Super Mario data set, right? So it's fun thing. So it looks at the unit sales for Mario games from like 1980 something to like 2026. I don't know. And this viz by Nobu actually is very fun because he embedded some web objects as a GIF, animated GIF. So you see like the little mushroom, the star, and little Mario over at the left hand side. So it's a very cute way. The size of the coin actually represents the size of the unit sales. So I think this is a pretty thematic design, but a very unique way of showing the the sales within Tableau itself. All right. The next one I want to show is by Prashant. And this is, I mean, if you don't pay close attention, you probably won't notice, but the bars actually have kind of like a glowing effect around each of them. And this is actually done using map layers. So you have like one map layers, and the one on the outer edge of the bars are of a lower opacity, so it creates that illusion of that glowing effect. So I thought that was a really cool way of kind of doing bar charts. Obviously, you can't do this for everything, but it's a very fun way of showing it. The next one is by Yoshihito, and this is a very straightforward dashboard, but I really like the way that he has this dynamic switch over the top where you can look at sales by units, you can look at the different dimensions itself, and it kind of sorts itself by the different decades and the games itself. And it's a very fun way of looking at it. The next one is by Tsutomu. And this one actually has a kind of like a timeline series on it. So you can actually click on the years on the lower portion of it, and it kind of shifts that little dot on the left hand side on how high the sales are. So that was a very cool animation trick that he used. The next one is not exactly Mario, but Rudy has actually done a Donkey Kong Bonanza Fist. You haven't played this game. This game is fairly new. I think it came out like a couple of months ago. I've heard a lot of good things about this game. Like it's really fun and all. So if you're keen, you can actually check out the game as well. Now for Tableau conference, Don will talk a little bit about that. But we have finished in February. Actually, they announced the top 3 finalists for Iron Fist, and that's Kevin, and Brian. So this year is going to be really exciting because all 3 of them have been in the community for quite a while, and they have been doing a lot of awesome work. If you've not checked out their Tableau public profile, you should, because they are doing a lot of kind of Tableau magic, like things that you would not think that are doable in Tableau. They have done it. So I'm really excited to see them and what they have to offer to us on stage this year. And if you want to explore the rest of the entries, this is the link. I'll share the recording after this as well, but you can actually explore. I think there's about 122 entries for this year. So you can go ahead. There's a lot of really cool stories that people have created. Or if you would like, you can actually check out the podcast that I do. I've interviewed some of these amazing visitors, so you can actually take a look or listen to how they have come up with their ideas, their inspiration, and the development process and challenges and stuff like that. So it's a pretty interesting way of diving into it. So over to you, Don, to give us a little bit of intro to what Tableau Conference is and what to expect.
I didn't have any cool GIFs for my slide. I'm keeping it very old school with a print screen. So, you guys can shame me later. It's fine. So if you haven't gone to Tableau Conference, it's amazing. It'll be like my 3rd time going. It's very big. How big do you think it is, Lois? Like 20,000 or?
Probably, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of us that are presenting, some famous names. It's 3 days. So it's Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May to the 7th. But it really has everything Tableau. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the community was just because like how welcoming and how friendly everybody is. You're meeting like other, people that are interested in data like you are. Because Tableau isn't just about, it's about so much more than just a visualization tool. It's a community, like DataFam community, and you're learning neat things. Yes, there's the Iron Viz, where you see live, people have to build like a dashboard in 20 minutes. I couldn't do it because I'd probably forget my name, and then there we go. Like I wouldn't be able to be, I'd be starstruck on stage and just wouldn't be able to continue. But I don't know how they do it, but it's amazing. You should sign up. Can we go to the next slide?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, no worries. So the registration link is there. There's a coupon, I think, still in like $300 off. So if you can register, you're not too late. There's sessions already, such as a session with me and David Kelly. I may or may not be wearing my light up shoelaces that I got one year from Interworks. Just, TBD there. And the Flurlash twins, they always have great sessions. There's some other famous names, but, I wanted to share the more important ones with you all. right here. So I'm just kidding. So our session's about future-proofing your Tableau data model. That sounds really, techie, but it's all about like, how can you design a dashboard that won't fail when new data is added? Because a lot of the things that were talked about today are excellent points to make. Like, how do you ensure a successful dashboard? Well, a lot of the things that Sahana talked about are still applicable in the Tableau dashboard world too, because it's all methods for, impact analysis. Like, is your dashboard successful? So those are great tips. Even Tableau world, even though we're not doing cool things like design video games, Jeffrey, we're not doing anything like that. So, if you want to go to the next slide, did I add another slide? Yes. Okay. So the other cool thing that we did, very important here, is we designed some pins for Tableau conference for me to give out. It was the cats versus the sheep llama thing here. It was supposed to be a llama, but Microsoft Creator made it look more like a sheep. So which one was more popular? We had a poll. It was the cat. Not biased there at all. I have 2 cats. I didn't hit vote like 10 times. No. A lot of users said it was the cat. So, but anyway, I made an executive decision, and I'm going to have both pins. So if you see me at Tableau conference, talk to me about your cats, your dogs, show me pictures. That's cool. Talk to me about your Tableau dashboards, and ask me if you want a pin. So you can have one of these lovely pins. I will give them out. But I only ordered 50 of each. So try to find me early and show me your cat pictures and so on. So the cat won, but we just decided to go with both. All right. And is there any more slides? Did I add?
No.
Nope. This is over to you. Over to you, Louis.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's a very strong reason to head over to Tableau conference this year. So I just wanted to add a little bit about games like this. So as I talked about this earlier in the call, this is a community project, and we have kind of like, it used to be monthly, but we kind of stretch it a little bit. So it's kind of like quarterly theme challenges. We have a few ones like Spider-Man, Disney, Pac-Man, Mario even. And this month, we are actually restarting the Pokemon challenge that we did a couple of months back. Oh no, wait, sorry, last year. Because Pokebia is the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. Pokebia is out. It's taken the world by storm. I'm playing Pokemon Fire Red with my daughters. I thought this would be a fun way to kind of reintroduce that. We did have some badges. I won't be at Tableau conference this year, but let's see. I don't have the badges here on my desk. But what we're gonna do is create a viz about Pokemon. It can be about your first Pokemon game, about how the franchise evolved, your favorite party, your favorite Pokemon, and we will choose our favorite 3 visas, and we'll send you the badges. So it's a very nice kind of badge that you can put in your bag, and we might print some notebook. We'll see. Yeah, but this 3 kind of images is something that we created last year. So gotta visit them all. Chatizard uses Data Blast and Visachu. Yeah, Visachu. It's always a hard thing to pronounce. Visachu is super effective. So this is kind of a play of words of the themes of Pokemon. So it was very popular last year when I was at TC. Everyone was grabbing the badges off my bag, and we thought that we might just redo this. So when you kind of submit your visas to Tableau Public, just remember to tag me, Dawn, and Will Sutton on LinkedIn or Twitter, whichever works for you, or even Slack if you want to. And we'll constantly look out for visas. But if you need help, there are curated data sets already. We'll provide a official announcement probably like next week or something. But you will have like a list of existing data sets that you can play around with, or bring your own data sets, whichever is fine. I think that's probably the last slide I have. Thank you so much from me, Maha, and Dawn, and to Sahana and Jeffrey for giving us your time to run through amazing speeches that you guys have. If there is no other questions, we can end the call and we'll see everyone in June. Thank you.